You're live.
This is the Senate Transportation Committee. We are at Friday, February 6th. I might remind the committee that before crossover, we have 16 days of committee time, which is daunting, if you ask me, but and we are here with the Agency of Natural Resources updates, and first with wildlife crossings. And if the two of you could name, give a little background and then go into it, we'd very much appreciate that.
Great. Thank you all so much for having me. For the record, my name is Jens Hilke. I'm a conservation planner with Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department.
And I'm Andrea Wright, the Environmental Policy Manager at the Agency of Transportation.
And we wanted to speak this morning for a little bit about the work that we've been doing collaboratively for many, many years now, and give you a little bit more insight into roads and wildlife.
Was that a real thought?
Yes.
You think?
No, Benjamin Young. I believe that's in the kingdom somewhere. I'm not sure. Yeah.
I think it was AI.
I wondered.
It's beautiful.
You just pull up and then it walks across like that.
Yeah, that's kind of my worst nightmare, actually.
I know.
I know.
And if you get your camera out fast enough.
Yeah.
Maybe
That's pretty big.
I assume you're pretty familiar with the Agency of Transportation's mission, so we didn't include it. But for those of you who are new to the department, we believe in the conservation of fish, wildlife, plants, and their habitats for the people of Vermont. That's a mission that we take very seriously. It takes us in a lot of different directions. And one of those is ensuring the safety of animals and the ongoing maintaining populations into the future. So I think we should start with a little bit of why we should care about this issue and why you might want to care. And first of all, of course, is the safety of the traveling public. And I just mentioned how that moose on a foggy road, that's my worst nightmare. And I think that is a substantial concern for the traveling public and one we take very seriously. Another reason we should care is the economic argument. Nationally, there's more than $8 billion a year in property damages because of wildlife vehicle collisions. The full cost to society, we estimate, is estimated at about $7,000 per collision with deer, about $30,000 per collision with a moose. That's the full cost to society. That's not just the cost to the driver's vehicle, for example.
Can you ask questions or?
I'll
ask it
Would
later.
you rather we go through the presentation or break in? Your choice.
It is your choice.
I'll just ask the question and you don't have to answer it. We can talk later. So
Whatever. Go.
the way to, I'm interested in knowing how those costs are defined, because sometimes there's a cost for a person and it used to be $1 million a person, but that was years ago. I don't know what it is now.
This study was done by Clevenger, Tony Clevenger out of Alberta. And I believe they took into account the cost of the average cost of the damage to the vehicle, the average cost in compensation for time off work, the cost of the animal itself in terms of potential revenue, and then any average damage to road infrastructure. As far as I know, that's what's included in that estimate.
Thank you.
And then the last argument I would suggest here is one of stewardship, and it is much more effective, efficient to keep our common species common than to wait till when they become endangered, and then it's much more costly to be dealing with endangered species than it is to be keeping common species common.
Yeah, I could just add that for the stewardship part, keeping the common species common. If they're common, we don't get regulated on those species. So there's sort of an added benefit to helping that happen.
So I just want to lay out the larger land use pattern here beyond the road segment itself. So of course we have our largest forest blocks, and that's where most animals spend most of their time. And so we have more species diversity in the larger forest blocks. And then we have a set of forest blocks that are smaller, perhaps not as biologically diverse, but are so critically important because of their location on the landscape. I often refer to those as connectivity blocks or stepping stone blocks. So as we think about Act 181 or the larger land use implications here, we're very much focused on this larger landscape pattern. But then within that, of course, we do have
So those blocks would include private owners that,
Yes, and Vermonters have been managing their forest lands effectively for many years. And so that isn't necessarily mutually exclusive. We can have a working landscape, we can meet multiple goals at the same time and still allow for wildlife connectivity.
I would just say this because in my afternoon committee, we've had, a lot of those larger blocks are more than likely in current use.
Absolutely.
And one of the concerns I've had for a long time is the breakup of those blocks. A lot of people bought with that. If you've got 100 acres, then they do 333-acre lots, and you end up with 3 houses in smaller blocks. And that breakup in current use, I think, is not good for the landscape in that, and we have not figured out how to adjust for the breakup of those large blocks.
Your point is well taken. The sprawl is perhaps our greatest threat in Vermont, and one that really endangers this whole pattern and the success of our wildlife populations into the future.
And in the current use program, the per acre benefit you get is greater in a 30-acre piece than it is for someone with 200.
Wow.
Okay. So then there are the wildlife crossings, and then there's the entirety of the stream network. And so all of these are micro vectors that help link this larger pattern together. So wildlife road crossings are the pinch point between the connection of wildlife movement and the human transportation networks. But those overlapping networks, they really come to a head right at those wildlife road crossings. But my point is that the larger system we're depending on is much more than just the gray infrastructure at the wildlife human interface.
This is great. Are these mapped?
Yes, and that's my next slide. We can see them in the Vermont Conservation Design on the BioFinder website.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So the conservation design is a science-based vision to sustain the state's valued natural areas, forests, waters, wildlife, and plants for future generations. The design has been around for quite some time now. You can interact with it on the BioFinder website. And it's really it's the prioritization, the statewide prioritization of what the most important places are for maintaining our wildlife into the future. The design is broken up into several different scales. So you can look at this landscape pattern. Again, I just started with that larger pattern that we're looking for across the landscape. So the conservation design does include landscape scale elements like those forest blocks to give the sense of where that biological diversity is and where those most resilient places are on the landscape. The design also includes those wildlife road crossings. And so those are mapped based on the amount of forest on both sides. So typically wildlife road crossings are evergreen and wetland habitat with forest on both sides. So they have not been field verified. This is a model based on where there's suitable habitat on both sides of the road. But those models have gotten significantly better since I started in the department in 2006. And so the science has really improved dramatically in that time. So just to give you a sense of sort of the scale of movement, this is a bobcat. Male bobcats move on average about 19 miles per day. It's been a few years since I've hiked 19 miles per day, several days in a row. They have a home range of 27 square miles, and females have about a 9 square mile home range. So some animals are moving around a lot just to meet their daily and seasonal needs. They're using different food sources at different times of the year. So that might take them to the wetland in the spring, the ridge lines in the fall. They're moving around a lot. And so that inherently means crossing roads. We also see very big movements. This is a bear down outside of Bennington, who during a bad mast year, the beech nuts weren't great, up and went over to Brattleboro and back. That was a 140-kilometer journey in a month. So we see these big movements. We see Canada lynx moving through, dispersing from populations in Maine. So there are everyday movements, there's seasonal movements, and then there are these very big dispersals. Typically, those are young males looking for love, sometimes in the wrong places. More than that, species are on the move in response to climate change. This is a model of some 3,000 species, mammals, birds, and amphibians, and there they are moving in response to climate change. This is from our partners in the Nature Conservancy. They estimate that entire populations are moving north and south away from the equator on average 11 miles per decade. That's about a mile per year. Entire populations moving a mile per year away from the equator, north and south. It's also about 36 feet upslope. So animals are rearranging their home ranges in the face of climate change. And please notice how the Northeast, what a pinch point that is for this sort of movement. So the connected forests and waters that we enjoy in Vermont are critically important for the movement of species on a continental scale. And the fact that we still enjoy forest in Vermont makes our connectivity even more important for the entire region. Please.
That's great.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what.
Go ahead.
Well, I just want to say, I was shocked when they found a limbkin in Massachusetts, which if you've ever seen one of those, they're like a Florida bird. So that might be happening incrementally, but I also think we're seeing species make unexpected extreme leaps at a much faster speed.
Yeah.
So I do also want to recognize that.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So this is a typical culvert replacement for us, going from a culvert to a bridge. Traditionally, it's been hydrology and hydraulics that drive the structure sizing, of course. Well, even before Tropical Storm Irene, but more in a more intense way after Tropical Storm Irene, the agency really worked closely with river scientists at ANR and biologists, and really have adopted a new hydraulic design standard that considers bank full width and also is looking at sediment and debris transport so that it is more resilient in our floods. But at that same design standard, we can achieve both aquatic organism passage and terrestrial wildlife movement as well. So there's that upsizing has an overlapping benefit, certainly for resilience. And you can see in that picture of the existing culvert, the small culvert with it's not nearly bank full width. So you have the water on either side of the culvert. So you can imagine in a storm event how that water is trying to get through there, not really being successful at that and going around. Whereas in the bottom picture, plenty of room to move and meander in storm events, also giving us the opportunity to provide some habitat movement underneath the structure.
Yeah, when we build new, we overwhelmingly meet multiple values at the same time. Go ahead.
Do you have numbers on how many bridges that we've replaced with from culverts? Because I wonder how much that plays into their increase in cost. Not that I'm saying it's not worth it, but
Yeah, they're certainly more
We're-
expensive. I don't know.
they're more
the
expensive
numbers.
to repair and replace.
Yeah, I bet we could probably dig that data out, but I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, certainly need to look at the cost benefit over time and with our storm events and what that provides. There's definitely sort of an optimization in that, but.
We're having trouble replacing bridges.
Well, for stormwater runoff, particularly in the Champlain Valley, we must have mapped most of that area.
For stormwater runoff,
Yes.
it's probably not my area. That's more ANR's. not even your department.
Yeah, forget
but-
Well,
Yeah.
you know, we have standards that we've agreed to and where we're gonna get to with the stormwater runoff piece. And particularly, there's a lot of culverts, for example, that aren't up to snuff and are really important to change for stormwater runoff. And I, you know, and we've set standards and we have goals. So I'm just wondering how much we have stuff mapped in that. And
Yeah, I'm not sure about the mapping. Certainly, this is sort of speaking to the whole landscape of development and permitting, and there's the stormwater rules that require, you know, retaining a certain storm event on the property that it's coming from, the impervious surface that it's coming from, and so that being retained there is definitely a benefit to our downstream structures. So that's been a big improvement over the last 5 or 10 years. This is a really great example of some early coordination. This is a project on Route 12 between Worcester and Elmore, so the side of the Worcester Range. We had 5 undersized structures that were being replaced, 4 of which were identified as being in really important high-rated habitat blocks. Certainly using a lot of what Jens just went over in the science, we have a good understanding of where those important areas are. And so that was during our resource ID process, during scoping. So really early in the design process, identified as a need in this area. So any accommodations and benefits were really incorporated really on the project design process. And that's a really important thing. So we had a variety of both culverts and bridges that were upsized with this project. Before, they were really impassable for wildlife, and now they'll accommodate a variety of most, if not all, types of wildlife, from macroinvertebrates. Fish passage is better, amphibian passage better, terrestrial passage much improved. And then going back to sort of the co-benefits of resilience and connectivity, one of the structures on this stretch is actually included in our resilience improvement plan also. It was at 36% bank full width and was then designed for 183% bank full width. So creating much more resilience along that stretch, which we did have some repeat damages in that area over the years, and definitely improving the connectivity in this area.
And this is one of those 5 structures, Bridge 84, and just wanted to point out the wildlife shelf underneath the bridge. And so there's, you know, with early coordination, it's very easy to accommodate those sorts of shelves and put it right into the plans at really minimal cost. It's just a question of allowing for enough ground before and when we say wildlife shelf, please don't think road. I'm talking about goat path, where we really don't want something as wide as a road that's going to increase human use or people hanging out under there, but really look for a goat path. The rocks that protect the abutments under bridges are particularly bad for deer and moose movement. So really, we just need a goat path to get in and amongst those rocks. Other species will tolerate those rocks just fine. Bobcat would much rather be up on that rock. Bear will tolerate that. So it's really the moose and the bear, the moose and the deer that would need that shelf.
I'm glad that bridge is done.
And the rest will be finished this evening.
Yeah, well, you know, it's my way home.
Yeah.
So, and at least the traffic lights are gone.
Yeah.
This is an example from Route 9 in Searsburg that was constructed in 2004. This is another occasion where the Fish and Wildlife Department worked very closely with the Agency of Transportation to appropriately size this bridge to allow for bear movement. And then we were wonderfully surprised when a Dispersing Canada Lynx used that same structure a few years ago. So here again, we're meeting multiple values at the same place. Certainly this passes floodwaters. We really pushed for this with bear dispersal in mind, and yet these structures are working for a whole host of animal species. I mentioned the rock and movement for deer and moose. The Little River Shelf, so that's under I-89 and Route 2 at Little River in Waterbury, was our first effort at building a wildlife shelf in 2014. It added about $20,000 to more than 8 million. 8 million was the contract price. The project regrettably went well over that. So it was not a significant amount of money, and it was an insignificant addition to a very significant project. And it was our first proof of concept. And so we did add the shelf under I-89. It has been wonderfully successful in terms of the number of species that have moved under 89 at this location. I'll talk more about this location in a moment, but I just wanted you to see in the bottom right, even when the erosion control matting was still on, deer began to use this structure and use the shelf underneath it.
Yeah, and Jens says $20,000 for that nearby $8 million project or more. Really, those projects always have waste materials that they need to find a place to put. So it was really a nice benefit to be able to fill in that stone fill into the bridge and right nearby.
It's great.
So yeah, we proved that it worked there, sort of like a pilot project there. So now we are incorporating it into projects as a standard drawing where habitat importance is identified and where the structure has the headroom. Traditionally, the stone fill under the bridges isn't covered. We usually grub, what we call grubbing materials, filling in that space in the stone fill outside of the bridge. But now we have seen that we can, the concern was that if we fill that in, vegetation would grow up and sort of interfere with the substructure. But we're seeing that doesn't happen. There's the shading from the bridge and it really doesn't allow for larger vegetation to take hold. And so it's really an easy thing for us to do and fill right underneath the bridge so that there is that passageway. And as Jens said, it's really small. It's a really narrow area that we're trying to provide, so we don't attract human activity in that area, and so that the wildlife is using it more regularly.
So I was just speaking about Little River, and so I just wanted to focus on the larger effort of reconnecting the Green Mountains. The spine of the Green Mountains have relatively few roads across them, and so it makes for, compared to the rest of Vermont, well-connected forest north to south. And so you can think about that as the spine of connectivity across the whole state, with I think it's just 13 road crossings in total along the entirety from north to south. But in particular, the Winooski River Valley does present something of a barrier. And so here we have I-89 with 13,500 vehicles in each direction every day. Route 2 with 5,000 average annual daily traffic. The railroad, the river road as well. So there's a really significant barrier in the middle of this highway of wildlife movement. And so we're really focused on reconnecting the greens and extending. There's considerable amount of permanently conserved land, state-owned land in Mount Mansfield State Forest and Camel's Hump State Park, and yet that permanently protected land doesn't come all the way down to the road. And so we are very interested in land use planning and land protection that makes for a permanent connection, so that when VTrans can invest in infrastructure improvements at those locations, that lines up with a land use pattern that will allow for wildlife movement. So partners in the land protection world, the Nature Conservancy, Vermont Land Trust, the Trust for Public Land, the Stowe Land Trust, the Water and Greater Lands Initiative have been working for about a year now, really focused on this area and reconnecting the Green Mountains. It's very much a team effort. So this is the map of permanently protected land in green, and you can see that the fingers of that permanently protected land get close to, but don't connect. And then I highlighted 3 structures along this road segment that are particularly important for wildlife. As I mentioned, Little River Shelf is already very effective. The other 2, when they reach the end of their service life, we're really hoping they'll be appropriately sized. So there's really opportunity to meet this, to have a multi-pronged approach in this location. The town of Bolton has reworked its zoning to extend its forest and conservation district down to the river to allow for north-south connectivity that meets up with permanently protected land on the other side of in Duxbury. So what we're seeing here is a land use opportunity where zoning is meeting up with gray infrastructure to allow for wildlife connectivity. At present, Pineal Brook isn't passing a lot of animals. It has a turn in it that means animals can't see all the way through it. So when it reaches the end of its service life, I'm confident that I know we have an opportunity to appropriately size it, and I would suggest we also have a responsibility.
Yeah, I know we're running close on time, so I'm going to fly through this. This is just another area when we talk about reconnecting the greens. This is an area down south. What Jens was talking about was more north. This is connecting the greens to Western Mass and Connecticut, southeastern New York, into the Hudson Highlands. And this is a project that we had, Jens showed that bear tracking movement in this area. We knew that Route 9 was a potential barrier in it moving through that area. And so knowing that we had that habitat and the connected lands, and we have this priority linkage mapping, we decided to, instead of lining a 7-foot culvert, to install a bridge instead. You can see in the detail, there's little shelves on either side. Like we said, those shelves are really small. So it's not, this kind of just points to the different scales. We talked about the small scale, putting grubbings underneath the bridges. This is a larger scale. It's not something that we're doing everywhere, but we're using the science that ANR has, and really in those critical areas, seizing the opportunity that we might have missed because if we just line this, it would probably last another 50 years. And so we wanted to make sure that while we had the opportunity to replace the structure, that we went with something that could provide that movement in this critical area.
Some species, because they are longer lived, late to sexual maturity, and quite frankly, slow, are harder hit by vehicles than others. So with amphibians and reptile populations in particular, we run the risk of eliminating entire populations pretty quickly because they don't make a dent in the car. And so with amphibians, they take on average about 6 minutes to cross the road. Think about how quickly a deer can cross the road, and still we have 1 million, nationally, we have 1 million deer collisions every year. So 6 minutes crossing the road, you can wipe out many animals in short order. And we're talking about the first rainy night in the spring. So inherently bad conditions. So even if the mortality for the amphibians isn't a huge concern to you, it is a concern to some drivers who will brake, who will swerve, who will create other traffic problems. So the amphibian crossings are a situation where we don't just get that by appropriately sizing our existing infrastructure. Often these sorts of species require specialized structures.
Go ahead.
I know I just want to make one point on your last slide, which is in our area, we have a team, the salamander team, and they plan around when that first move is in our area, and they will go out and they move salamanders from one side of the road to the other, and they flag traffic in multiple locations. And I wish there was some kind of support or financial way we can help them, or even offer like AOT support for flagging or something, because they are volunteers who go out and really make sure that our area doesn't see like mass casualties of salamanders, and they do it all with their own time, and it's quite a community event. So if there's any support you can offer them from your work.
Well,
Yeah.
I would say I'm thrilled that they're doing that, and I'm certainly aware of that and have participated in that.
Yes.
I'm concerned for their safety.
Yeah, exactly.
And we shouldn't have people on the road and rainy nights in the spring.
Yeah.
And so ideally, we have an infrastructure that moves those animals rather than having people on those roads.
Well said.
But please don't get me wrong, I absolutely support that effort. But I just want to point out the inherent safety concern with it.
Yeah.
We, in Moncton,
Yeah, yes,
we have one.
yes,
Oh.
You showing that?
yes.
Oh,
There you
cool.
go.
This is it.
No.
You have two.
Good
Already
segue.
beat you to it.
Please.
Oh, look at
Okay, there it is.
This is tremendously successful. It is now known internationally. We've taken field trips here for the International Conference on Ecology and Transportation, national field trips here as well. These are functioning very, very well for salamanders. We're estimating 93% effective moving amphibians, non-climbing amphibians through these structures. Please note the presence of those stone walls. That's waste concrete block that funnels the animals into the crossing. Not only are they successful for salamanders, they're also successful for other species. And please note that bear is scratching the top of the culvert with his shoulders and still would rather go through the culvert than over the top of the road.
That's great.
The agency and Fish and Wildlife Department have been working on the highways and habitats training for many, many years now. It is incredibly successful. It has been one of the most successful ventures in helping agency staff to better understand the issues, to handle those species, and to really understand their needs and how they interact with the road system. We do collect roadkill information from the public. We have a roads and wildlife data collection system. We encourage drivers not to do this while driving. It is set up so that you can pull off to a safe location and then flag the location. We have been collecting this information since 2001. It's not ready for prime time. We're still collecting that information, but it's absolutely helpful to begin to figure out where there are wildlife vehicle collisions.
So if you see roadkill, you go online and just.
Yes, and there's actually an app that you can download on your phone that talks you through that whole step by step. And then the last point here, I know we're a few minutes over, but thank you for your patience. The Agency of Transportation and the Fish and Wildlife Department have really focused on prioritizing structures so that those costs aren't everywhere all the time, but really focused on what we consider to be the most ecologically important. We have identified 12,000 structures of all conditions. 1,200, thank you. Thank you. 1,200 structures of all conditions that we feel are ecologically important. And so you can see the map at right. And then there are 67 of those that are in poor condition. And so those are the immediate opportunities for appropriately sizing infrastructure moving forward.
I don't have anything to add to that. Yeah, just really building on all of the work that's been done for the last couple of decades together. We have built another modeling tool that kind of helps us predict where different species want to move and their movement patterns, and just have been able to overlay all of those different efforts and technologies into this so that we can be making good decisions where it needs to be made. So we're not just sort of trying to fit it in everywhere. Yeah, being really pointed with our decisions and working with our asset conditions at the same time.
Great. And with that, this is from the Richmond Elementary School. I just wanted to reinforce how important this is for for many of the public. So thank you all so very much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. It's very interesting. Thank you.
Great.
I'll bring in a framed picture poster that Mazza and I, when we were both chairs. I think Phil Scott was his vice chair back then. Were you on that committee back then?
But
In the house.
In your picture that first. We filmed it, but it's a kind of a, because I thought it was well kind of. And turns out it was real.
This is the Moncton Crossing there.
Yeah, the Moncton. And so
Right.
it's a spoof on that. The picture, I'll bring it in. You know,
Bring it in.
for yourself, careful
We need
with
more.
it.
We need
They had it
somebody
framed and
from-
sent to me, and it looks official and stuff, and.
I'm happy to share with you some non-spoof pictures.
Yeah.
I have a big story I want to tell you later.
oh, I've got some bear damage pictures.
Yeah, you gotta see that.
Yeah. This would be
Thanks for your
very.
patience. Press running a little late. Have a great day.
Chris?
All right, that's good.
I have to say, as former commissioner,
I-
it's such a joy to see Jens and when you're presenting. We have a treasure in both of those folks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good morning. For the record, I'm Christopher Herrick. I am the Director of Emergency Management, Safety, Hazmat, and Homeless Encampments for the Agency of Transportation. And so I believe I'm here because the commissioner mentioned my name.
Yes, that's probably true. Probably got you in trouble.
Well, I was watching the testimony. I'm like, oh, he says it 2 more times. I'm going to appear here.
3 times the charm.
Exactly. So, I think what I'll do is I think just to give context of what I watched all the testimony and I actually talked with these folks as well. So in Vermont, since I've taken this over, I have about a year's worth of data. I'm currently dealing with around 35 homeless encampments in the state right of way. So that's my my purview. I don't deal with them outside. So that includes along the highways, the park and rides are where we see most of our business. Airports, believe it or not, and along the railroad right of way. In fact, we have one over here in Montpelier. So what normally happens, and it's part of our protocol, is we do an assessment. We'll go out and just how many are here, how many folks are here. And when I said how many, I meant structures. Are they tents? Are they vehicles, campers, so on and so forth? How many people are their children? And then the assessment that we built has a threat or a safety scale. Is there an immediate danger to life and safety? Are they under a state bridge? So infrastructure now becomes compromised if they're building fires. And so that's how we prioritize working with folks. So then when we make contact, we bring in folks either from AHS or somebody who has contract with AHS, whether it's the Howard Center, Washington County Mental Health, because there are a lot of things going, a lot of dynamics with these homeless encampments, whether it's mental health issues or trying to help them get housing. So one particular case was in Williston. I'm just going to use this as an example of how complicated these get. I swung by the Williston Park and Ride, and there was a car there, and there were 2 people in it. And I noticed it had been there a couple of days, so I knocked on the window, and it was weather like we're going to have tomorrow. And so I said, "Are you all right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "Are you living in this car?" "Yes." And I said, "How are you staying warm?" They had a dog in the car too. I said, "Do you have food? Do you have a dog? Food? We have everything we need." I said, "Well, okay, this isn't the best situation, but can't really just throw their car away from, that's where they live." He had a full-time job, by the way. He couldn't put money away enough to get an apartment. And there's a lot of other things going on. So I brought in Howard Mental Health, and we started working with them. Getting them into housing was problematic. But we worked together, and we finally, in September, I met with them in January. It took me till September to work out all the kinks with Williston PD and get them into housing that was suitable for a lot of reasons. Then we worked with Howard. Howard was giving them cars. So anyway, now we're left with this car. And I can tell you it's not a car that has any value. But I was able to find a record to take it. And he said, "I'll try to recover something from salvage. He's not going to get a penny. So he's going to rely on the reimbursement, which is currently like $125. But he was willing to do that. That is somewhat atypical, but not completely unheard of around the state. What I'm finding more commonly, and I was up in your area yesterday, Park and Ride in Colchester, there are 6 camper trailers in that Park and Ride, and everyone got served with trespass orders yesterday. And actually one of them just called me while I was waiting. And they'll be moving every once in a while, we find one where they just leave. And that's a problem too. And in those cases, the agency tells them, and we just pay for it. We don't go through the DMV reimbursement process. Because it's on the state right away, we need it out of there. It becomes I forget the legal term, but it's a attractive nuisance. And we actually had one that sat on a property, was uninhabited, the snow came in, we couldn't get it out, and somebody else started living in it. What we tell them, and we eat all the costs. And the cleanup costs for the last year cost the agency, and this is a lowball estimate, $179,388. And that's just around for the whole state. That's not including my time, this time of my staff. And so just to give you, if we have to go in and clean up an encampment, I bring one, I have hazmat underneath me as well. I bring one of the hazmat personnel, because oftentimes there are lithium batteries and other substances that that can't be disposed of in the normal waste stream, and needles and so on and so forth. Then we bring a contractor in and they help us dispose of that. So that part of that cost is the contractor, but my staff costs aren't in that. Staffing costs for just my bureau total $126,750, and that's an estimate. And that was when we had a person working full-time on homeless encampments, and 20% of my time and 20% of one of my staff. My time's now gone up because that other person has left. And then the $10,000 for hazmat. So that's kind of the world that we're living in terms of state right of way. I'm not able to speak to what happens on private property, or on town property. And I would defer to the commissioner on that. We did have a discussion about raising the reimbursement rate, for the tows for abandoned vehicles from 125 to 250. Is that what you floated? I don't know how that impacts their budget. But just to give you a perspective, because we did have a meeting, to try to see if there was another approach we could use. What I understand is there were 1,400 vehicles last year considered abandoned. 400 of those were in the state right of way. And the number of tows were in 24, 157, 25, 256. And I'm sorry, that's an incorrect. That's the number that filed for reimbursement.
Yeah.
So it's 157, 256, and then this year so far, 160.
Could we get a copy of that for the record?
Yes, we'll get your comments.
And so I just wanted to kind of frame the problem. I'm not saying it's not a problem, but it's also not like we have 1,000 vehicles out there where people are getting tow truck drivers are getting stiffed. I hope that's not the case. So anyway, that's the view from my perspective in AOT in the non-BMV world. And I'm certainly happy to answer any questions or suggestions folks might have.
Yeah, so when you get a call, or when you call a record, tow a camper or whatever it is, you just pay whatever they tell you the cost is.
No, they're going through the normal title process, which is $125. If it's a camper, that's a different process. We
Right.
just, because it's,
But I thought you said you don't go through the reimbursement process for simple, the cars that you're tipping.
so if it's a car that's left in the right of way from an encampment, what we'll do is folks from the commissioner's shop will put a sticker on it saying it's abandoned. Cause I need law enforcement to do that. After 72 hours, then I'll have it hooked. That tow truck driver will take it and then start that whole title search, and then they will get reimbursed. That's in those numbers.
Okay.
Campers, completely different. We just pay them directly out of our budget.
So the cars, you always go through the $125 process, but for anything that's not a car, a camper,
Yeah.
you just pay what they charge.
Yeah, because then eventually what's gonna cost us is the disposal of it as well.
Yeah.
So we're talking anywhere between 700 to, I think we had some down in Bennington, we had a few that we had to get rid of, and it was $5,000 by the time we were done.
Yeah, we heard from the wreckers, it could be even more than that.
Yes, so if we take them, we pay,
Yeah, okay. That's good.
or if we have them taken, I should say.
Well, thank you so much. I hadn't realized that this had fallen in your new role under.
Me either.
So.
We all get surprised.
One of the challenges we've been having in Hartford in particular, and it's slightly separate from this conversation, but we are told we can't do anything because it's not our right of way, it's AOT's right of way.
We the town.
We, the town municipality, exactly, thank you. And then AOT says they can't do anything because it's in the utilities right of way. You know, there's all these like layers of folks who
Sure.
tell us nothing can be done.
Well,
And we've had situations where we've gone from one person who is residing somewhere in an unsafe situation, because I just want to clear the air. If you're unhoused, I think of you as a victim. I don't think of you as someone doing anything inherently wrong. But we want you to not be in that kind of dangerous situation. But what has happened is we've had such delay that then more people come because it becomes a place of safety. And then we're talking, you've got 5 vehicles, maybe a camper now, maybe we had an abandoned boat that people were living out of. And it was, even though it was identified months before by the town, we were basically strung along, told we couldn't do anything about it. And it wasn't until we had like a serious, we had to seriously approach AOT to be able to resolve it. I'm just wondering, what's the process now?
Okay.
If a municipality is experiencing this and it's not technically their park and ride, or it's in a right of way that is with AOT.
so I'm sorry to hear that experience. That never made it to me, so I'm not sure.
This is about 2 years ago.
Okay,
so this is-
good.
Yeah,
Glad to
you
hear
weren't
that.
on the job yet.
So this program it got started in the summer before I started, and I started December of 24. So here's what I'll tell you. My phone number is 802-839-0660. And if any town has what they believe is a homeless encampment in the state right of way, I will come down or have one of my folks go down and assess it. I often use the DTA, the District Transportation Administrator, to go out and look.
Yeah.
We have maps, and so, but just because it's not in our right of way doesn't mean we go.
Okay.
And I, like you, am very concerned about these folks, especially this time of year. And I'm proud to say, and I've reported this to the secretary and in Human Services when I was brought in there. The Agency of Transportation treats every one of these situations with dignity and respect. And I'm very proud of that, and I demand that of my folks, because we don't know how or why people are in this situation, but it's where they are. And so if it's in the state right of way, I want to know about it, and we will deal with it. It might not happen in a week, but it takes time. Then getting the other agencies involved. If it's in a utility, we can work with them and encourage them. They probably don't want folks there
Yeah.
either. The railroad is the state right away.
Yeah. Okay, that's helpful because we've definitely had railroad situations, and then it's who do you call? it
So
sounds
you
like
can
you're-
call me.
Okay,
And
that's
with railroads, it's a little bit complicated in that we also have to abide by the federal rail regulations. We can't just go out and put flaggers like we can on the interstate or Route 2 or Route 7. We have to get special flaggers because even though the railroad may not be active, it's still a railroad. And so we have to work with Vermont Rail Systems, and they've been very cooperative as well. And so there is a system in place. And so, yeah, I would say I'm the entry point, but Everybody at AOP happens to know this now, so if anybody gives you the runaround, let me know, please.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
And then, I have some questions for the commissioner, and I see we have some of the towers here today, so I'd like to give them
Sure.
10 minutes to. Go ahead.
I can. Hold it.
Okay.
And you certainly can reach out to me. I think you all know how to get a hold of me.
So you're not on the schedule, but we did ask you if you could come back with some language. And thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. It's good to see you all.
Excuse me, Andrew Collier, Commissioner DMV for the record. Yes, Chair. So as you mentioned, you'd asked us to sit down with the Tour Association, see if we can come up with some better solutions that might not be perfect, and this isn't certainly perfect.
I think we have highlighted and we understand what the scope of the problem is. We're just looking to
Yep.
move in the right direction and be accommodating to both sides.
Absolutely. So if we could just touch on the RV section first, because I think that's, at least from our perspective, easy. We think the process now, which is the agency or municipalities, and we haven't heard too many municipalities, but there's just no way for us to adjudicate 6, 5, more or less $1,000 tow bills. It's hard for us to determine that the appropriate amount payout. I think that's a big question. I think that is an area would need a lot more focus if that was to be thought of being pulled into the DMV realm. I'll start off with the language we have, which I think was an initial attempt to move in the right direction, which is when we have instances of difficulty with municipalities and state agencies getting a tow truck that they can pay, and we would reimburse directly to those. So I would continue with that. When we sat down with the towing association, state police, with Chris Eric as well on Monday, the focus was more on the fee, which, you know, we heard the 125 is not great. So Tour Association came back and was adamant that they could be improvement if it was at the 250 mark. I have numbers for 200, 225, and 250. And what that delta between what we budgeted this year would look like. I would say the state police on the call also mentioned that they are working with the towing association to remove after hours towing of abandoned vehicles, or try to work away or find a way where when there's not a situation of immediate safety danger for that vehicle being there, that those tows happen between the hours of 8 and 5 or banker hours, if you will, to help alleviate the cost for the towing groups to be out at 3 a.m. or 2 a.m. Paying that extra fee. So I know the state police is working on that on their end. We're happy to move this number up. I think it'd be beneficial. I would just say in FY25, we had 256 payments out for the towing. I went through the staff and tried to look through why is that the case. A lot of these are not reimbursable tows. A lot of these are not being marked as wanting to be reimbursed. We have a lot of checkboxes that are no for the reimbursement from towing companies. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly causation of why that might be, but we're happy to move it up and see if that will help alleviate some pressures that are on the ground.
So in the language in here, what you're recommending is the same language. And what are you recommending for a number?
So I would be okay with the 250. That'd be if we stuck with what we had on target last year of 256, that'd be a delta of 24,000 what we have budgeted now. If 300 cars get towed by end of fiscal year, we'd have a delta of 35,000. And then 400 vehicles get towed, there'd be a delta of 60,000 between what we have budgeted in our recommended budget and
So what you're recommending in here is the exact same language as we have,
Yep.
but moving the number up
Yes.
to 250.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
But you wouldn't change your budget, so you would just kind of expect the run a deficit in the. Okay.
I think it. Yes, because I'm curious to see what would happen. Because FY24, we had 157. Last year we had 256. And again, when I went through and went through a lot of the applications that were coming through on, I'm trying to figure out why a lot of the check boxes are marked no. So
What do you mean?
so when the form comes in and it has the VIN for the vehicle, the police report number, this is only for public right of way, not for private abandoned vehicles. If all those match, when you're working down the form, there's a checkbox that said, would you like to be reimbursed or for 125? I'm not
Right.
sure the exact language, but it says reimbursement 125 for the towing fees, and it's a yes, no box.
And this is something that the tow.
Yeah, these are what the tow companies fill out and submit to us, and all the boxes are checked no.
The numbers that you have.
So the ones we actually paid out,
Plus.
yeah, or less than what we have budget for the 400 on the this year. We had budget 400 at the 125. So
It could be that they got the money from the person that owns the vehicle. Right?
I'm not sure.
But that would be one reason why they wouldn't ask for reimbursement. Like, yeah, the person came and picked up the car and they paid us.
But this is, they wouldn't pick up the car because they're still going through the this is the abandonment
This is only
paperwork
when you
to
get
get
the-
the title.
Right.
Yeah, to get the title.
Just to follow up on that, so could it be that they don't agree with the amount that they would? I mean, well.
I would have.
We're going to ask them to comment.
Yeah,
So,
do you have a sample of that?
We are short
We can
on
send
time, but
Okay.
we are I am gonna ask them to comment.
Okay,
and when we send these numbers, I can send the sample for what the blank form
great,
looks like.
thank you.
So are you going to hand us a new draft with the 250 in?
Yeah,
Or should we just request that Damien do that? And can you make sure that he knows that it's coming?
Yeah.
that'd be, yes.
Okay, so you're gonna, if you would send to Damien that. You've heard everything. Could just state your name and give us a comment. What do you think?
Yeah, so Bob Maloney, president of the Vermont Tow Association, doing the sign over here.
You can sit there and
We did meet with them. The numbers are for abandoned motor vehicles, in regards to public right of way. As the law is written, one of the classifications is a public right of way. So I think some of these boxes that aren't checked, if P&H truck stop calls a tower because a vehicle was left in their parking lot, they call the tower directly. They wouldn't be eligible for the reimbursement because it was a private property tow. If the police call and they have a police or incident number, they would be eligible for the reimbursement. And so, and currently in 2151, the definition of abandoned motor vehicle reimbursement, one of them is we had this put in there 3 years ago. It says a law enforcement officer has requested that the vehicle be removed by a tow business. So it doesn't have to be a vehicle that has been left on the side of the road because somebody was living in it or something of that nature. It could be somebody was in an accident, fled the scene, nobody knows who owns it. We towed the vehicle at police request and nobody's come and cleaned it. Those were all incidents of abandonment and how it was written. Those numbers are 1100 to 1400 over the past several years. Towers have only been reimbursed for approximately 400, which is on state right of way. So that's not how it was ever intended. And I think Jane Kitchell was here at the time, Senator Kitchell.
Yeah.
And there was a concern that the budget would go over at the $125. And she said, we will figure that out, but it's not fair that the tower, the 401 tower doesn't get paid because the budget ran, so to say. I'm not sure how this even got, why this is even in the section of section 13 about like whose idea was it to put this in there or why it was put in there.
this came to us from DMV. That's why we're asking DMV
Yeah.
what they're recommending.
So, yeah, so kind of odd. And we're thinking, right, like, why would we want to change this section? And if it does, then it's gonna declassify what is the abandoned motor vehicle for state police calls, which the majority of the tows are through state police. So that's where a lot of this is stemming from. We did talk with fire departments, because as the language is written, we're gonna build a fire department or the agency that called us, and they're gonna build a state. The fire departments are not interested in doing that at all. Not even a little bit. So, I'm not sure what the thought process was.
So are you opposed to this?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I think we are, I mean, it's essentially what you have here in 2151 to 2157. Except now you're gonna build the requesting agency. Right, and it's gonna actually change the definition of what we have in there now, so we'll only be able to collect on fees that are on state right of ways. In the state colony, so if we're left with a vehicle from state police that was called for an accident, we're not getting reimbursed regardless, which we're not getting paid now anyway, because for some reason.
I think it's trying to fix that problem. I thought was the point of the bill, was to actually resolve that exact issue, was so that if you had something in a parking lot that's under A&R, I don't know.
So yeah, in the parking lot and are correct, that
Yeah.
this is exactly what this is
Okay,
directing towards.
But your concern is it would
Correct.
narrow it down to only that and everything else would be left behind.
Correct.
I understand that.
And state police have a hard enough time getting a record now, because when we're stuck with $125 is, and we're not getting it most of the time.
So you didn't come to an agreement then?
That is what I'm hearing from you.
And the 250 doesn't fix the problem because they're changing the definition of applicable.
With Chris Herrick's, the RV situation, that's a whole different situation that he's handling internally at this department.
Do you feel like the language you would be called to tow vehicles that aren't in the right of way, but you're still getting the call,
Sure,
and then those ones wouldn't be part of the program?
correct. We'd be stuck with a car. We could still apply for a van and get the title.
Right.
And then scrap it. But you wouldn't be, right?
Okay, thank you. You can comment, but we're gonna move on from this.
Yeah, absolutely. Just real fast, I apologize for the confusion because we hadn't met. This was news. I think the best way to move forward on this, and this was an agency proposal to help Chris in his endeavors, is we just narrow it to reimbursement to a state agency, and we'll leave the rest the same. And that way, when Chris is down working and having difficulty finding a record, he can pay, and it'll give us the authority to reimburse.
So we need some clear language that would alleviate their concerns and would narrow in on his.
Yes, we'll get that adjusted.
And if you could run that language by the towers, so we know that we've got general agreement across the board, that would be helpful.
We can do that.
Thank you.
Don't have one on my table.
Would anybody mind if you took that?
Thank you.
We're gonna take a break until quarter after 10, and then,